I had 2 planes, I had a helicopter, I had a boat. I was ridiculously ambitious and cutthroat and ruthless. I had a target and nothing would stop me.
How much of your own personal cash went into that? It's not a trick question.
None.
Exactly. So let's talk about deals. Let's talk about acquisitions. So this started off as a family business.
Yes.
So when you got involved, what age would that have been?
Well, I was useless at school. My father said you might as well come into the business and work behind the counter at the age of 15,
okay.
Which I did. By the way, I was born in Richmond, strangely enough.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And that was our first shop. I was born above the shop.
So that was one shop at the time?
Yeah.
So how did we go from one shop to 2 shops? Because I want to see how we got to 2,500.
In fact, my grandfather and one of his sons were opening up 3 or 4 shops, whilst my father and his brother was 3 or 4, and they merged to about 8 shops. In those days, it was just after the war, and basically, if you got jewellery, you'd sell it because there was a shortage of everything. Mm. And they got hold of one product. It was often one product, and it was an American locket. They got this from America, which was not so badly affected. And they had a gold locket for about 5 bob or whatever it was, and they kept selling this because everybody wanted, they were so miserable during the war, they wanted to cheer themselves up, and they bought this gold locket, and they did very well, and they kept opening shops.
So merger, it's a family merger,
yeah.
So 8 shops. So you kept opening shops.
Kept opening shops.
Find a site.
Find a site in those days, yeah, but they had a fantastic buyer called Terry Jordan who knew what the public wanted. He had the common touch. He used to go to Butlins for his holiday, very ordinary chap, but he used to sell cheap stuff, and he did very well. But my father gave him a hard time. He left, and he opened up 26 shops on his own, and every one of them was next door ours. And every shop had compare our prices poster, a simple poster, because his prices were 25% less than ours. We went into loss, and we're losing 34,000. And my father became ill, and I felt that I wanted to take over.
So let's just go back a couple of steps. So we've got the 8 shops. You've got the buyer leaves, sets up his rival operation.
Yes. Does fantastically well.
You're growing organically.
Yes.
And what happens to the rival organisation? You bring that in?
I take over, and the first thing I've got to do is get out of this situation of losing money. And the worst thing then, H. Samuel have announced that they bought 20% of us, which was a prelude to a full-scale bid. You know, if they bought 20%, they're not doing it as an investment. They want to take over. So I'm going to lose my job, lose everything. I've got a mortgage. So I think, well, how can I get out of this situation? I need Terry Jordan. I'm not a buyer. And the buyer we had was a complete idiot that my father had put in. He was on the fiddle or whatever, and he was just useless. So I said, well, I've got to get Terry back. Went to see Terry. I've got the reins now, and I want you to come back. You should never go. So he said, well, I want £4 million for my business. If he would have said 10 million, I would have said, yeah, whatever, because he was key to it. So I went to my stockbroker and said, I'm buying this business for £4 million. I want to issue shares. They said, you can't. Nobody will take your shares. You're a loss-making business. Your shares are just going down. Nobody's going to take them. So I said to Terry, we've got a slight problem here. Nobody's going to take the shares. So I structured a deal with Terry where I gave him 2.5 million shares, which made him the biggest shareholder in the company, bigger than my father. But I didn't care. I needed to get the deal. And the other £1.5 million, I basically gave him a piece of paper. It was called a loan note, but basically it was an IOU, and it was worthless. He could have just, it had no backing to it. But he took this piece of paper because Terry felt, like I did, if he came back, we'd go places with our portfolio of shops.
So you merged his 26 in with your, what did you have at the time?
130.
Wow, okay. So you'd been opening shops like crazy. I mean, that's how did you open so many so quickly?
Well, no, I'm saying that wasn't me. That was with my father's business, with
right.
Terry Jordan at the helm. As soon as he left, we weren't opening any shops.
Oh, I see. So the growth had been because of him.
Exactly. He was a
and
brilliant
instead
buyer.
of having him as a competitor, let's bring him back on board.
Exactly. If somebody's pissing in your tent, invite them in and they'll piss out. So that's what I did. So I consolidated £1 million profit from him. And everyone said I've turned the business round.
Right.
Even though all I did was acquire him.
So effectively you took his profit, made you immediately look good.
Yeah. I got confident at that point, and I added his buying expertise to aggressive marketing, which was not prevalent in the high street, and it certainly wasn't prevalent with the jewellers.
They're very much a sort of a gentleman's profession, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No one wanted to be seen to be promoting anything.
You were not allowed to reduce watches. The watch people would not allow you to reduce watches, the price of watches. You had to sell them at that time. I reduced them. I was told the watch people would take away my agency, but they didn't, because they saw the huge amount of business I was doing. So sometimes you just have to ignore these things. And then we started saying everything was at half price with the shop, which everyone said, well, you're ruining the business, bring it down.
So were you running a constant promotion that never ended?
12 months in a year, like
which I suppose was appealing to the demographic who were the
Absolutely, because the
majority of your customers.
demographics then were young people, 16 to 24, who bought an
who were looking for a bargain.
Yeah.
Buying a business is just so rewarding, and I put together a free training showing you exactly how I do it. If you look in the video description below this video, there is a link. You click the link, you're taken through to the training, watch the training, and I'll show you exactly how to buy a business successfully.
So we're now with the combined business at about 150?
Yeah. I then started opening shops again to 200. We're doing phenomenally well. And Ratner's then started making money again, I think about 2 or 3 million. Terry's making...
Because of the more astute buying?
Because of astute buying and also aggressive marketing.
Okay.
Which was, I know that we all do discounts today, but this was new. We started it, all this 50% off continually, right through the year. So then I'm looking at H. Samuel, who have got 600 shops. We've got 180, 200 by then. And their shops are 3 times our size, much better name, the most incredible locations. Half of them are freehold. This was an absolute business that everybody wanted. But H. Samuel were hurting because of us. Because we were flying and we were hitting them, just like Terry's had hit us. We were hitting H. and they were in my target. I then went to see the chairman of H. Samuel, Edgar, his name was. And he was useless. And the strange thing was that Edgar's mother phoned me up and said I would sell 27% of my shares to you because my son is incapable of running that business. So I went to see her. I bought the 27% of the shares. I went back to Anthony Edgar. I said, I've now earned 27%. He says, yeah, but that still won't get you to buy the business. Anthony then agreed to call it H. Samuel Ratner's. He would be chairman and I'd be chief executive. He brought on his 3 directors. I brought on my 4 directors. So I knew that I really had control of that. I then wanted to fire him on day one because he was absolutely useless. That was always my plan. But my colleague said, you better go and see a barrister about this because he might sue you. So I went to see the barrister and he says, yeah, he could do that. So wait 3 months and then just say you couldn't work with him. So I waited 3 months. I then fired him and I had H. Samuel to myself. And that was the big stepping stone.
What I'm seeing now is the very focused side of you.
Yeah.
And...
ruthless.
Yeah, I was going to say cutthroat, ruthless. Yeah.
Oh, I had a target and nothing would stop me.
What got you out of bed in the morning? Having that target?
Well, I knew I had the right formula and I wanted to, the platform. And H. Samuel was the perfect... I was so excited about our formula because it worked. We had customers in places like Liverpool at Christmas queuing down the block, There was very few retailers who were doing that. We were hit on something. And I desperately needed the H. Samuel shops. I then targeted Ernest Jones. So
the H. Samuel shops were bought by issuing shares?
Well, we issued 75% of the consideration in ordinary shares.
Yeah.
And my stockbroker says we pay 25% in cash.
What was the total consideration? What did you pay for it?
150 million.
Okay.
Bearing in mind I made 68 million that first year with H. Samuel. It was quite a good deal.
Yes. Yeah, so 150 million, so that was like 35 in cash?
Yeah.
So roughly?
Yeah.
So where did that come from? From the trading of your existing business?
I borrowed it.
So here's a question. How much of your own personal cash went into that? It's not a trick question.
None.
Exactly.
All I wanted was a huge company.
What was the motivation for that?
I wanted to be the best retailer.
And did you make good money during those years for yourself?
Well, I was earning 850,000 a year.
Oh, that was a
and I had
A lot then.
a house on the company in Mayfair, which today is worth 90 million. I had all my expenses paid for. I had 2 planes. I had a helicopter. I had a boat. Yeah, so I was.
Good. I'm pleased about
I
it.
then targeted Ernest Jones. I'm not the person that I was then. I was ridiculously ambitious and cutthroat, ruthless. I actually repeated what I did with H. Samuel. So I said to them, if you join me, I'll put you on the board. In fact, I didn't have to fire them. They resigned. They felt that I was being disrespectful to them.
Were you deliberately disrespectful?
Yes. I wanted to get rid of them. They were running this fantastic business that their father had built up. These 2 young brothers were running it down to the ground. So they went. It's a bit ironic that I got rid of all these chairmen that I'd taken on, and then I took a chairman on and he fired me. So you live by the sword and die by the sword. So I paid the price in the end. But it's a means to an end. And I wouldn't have acquired H. Samuel. I wouldn't have acquired Ernest Jones if I played by the book.
So H. Samuel, 600 shops.
Yes.
You had at that point about 200?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're up to 800
Yes.
now. Ernest Jones was how many?
They were only 60, but they had something which was worth its weight in gold, which was they had agencies for the Rolex watch.
Ah.
And not only would a Rolex watch, as soon as you got it, would sell, because everybody wanted it, if you had Rolex agency and you had that sign up there, your diamond ring sales went through the roof because of the fact that people regarded it as a really pucker jewellers. And I always preferred acquisition to organic for the simple reason that if I took out a jeweller in a town, let's say like Luton, where there's 6 jewellers, why open organically a 7th jeweller? You'll have to add to the competition. By taking out a competitor, you're not adding to that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you're getting their shop front. You have to, if you put organically, you have to put a new shop front. You amortize that over 10 years. You take on good staff, experienced staff, and you also get a lot of their business, even though it's a different brand now. To me, there's no competition between acquisition or organic.
When buying a business, you need a great lawyer on your team. So why not use mine? His name is John Andrews, and his details are on the screen.
So we're at about 1,000 shops,
Yeah.
I think, now. Was the 2,500 including the 1,000 in America?
The reason why we were successful in America, and very few retailers have been successful in America, is that however successful our formula was in the UK, we didn't transport it across the Atlantic. And every mall that I went to in America, Sterling, one jeweller called Sterling, was outperforming every other jeweller. So I went to see him. He had 125 stores. I thought, this is what I want. He had a formula. He had a great management. And the reason he had a great management, he had the systems. There was no internet, but he knew how much he could lend people. And he used to phone people up and say, your uncle's birthday next week. You've got credit to buy him a signet ring, wouldn't he like that? And they would buy that. And that's why we expanded that business to 1,000 shops. And today it's been expanded to 2,500. We're still the world's largest jewellery business. But it's all based on his original formula, and we just rolled it out.
So what would you say to everyone who is thinking about that first deal, that first acquisition? There might be half a dozen of those acquisitions, sort of a buy and build in one particular sector, and then an exit. Any advice?
The only way to grow a business, in my view, is through acquisition. I really feel that organic is a tough struggle and a hard struggle. I'm very much in the favour of acquisition. The focus is how do I build a successful business, and then worry about. And if it's successful, you can always sell it.
You can always sell it, yeah, absolutely.